Welcome to Choreography, a podcast about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I'm Wendy Buskey.
And I'm Adrian Buskey. And this time we're talking about Korean Nationals 2025, looking at the results of that event. And then also we're going to be looking ahead to preview the Canadian Nationals and the World University Games, which actually has a number of notable elite skaters competing in it. So I think that's worth kind of looking at as well, as we're in that sort of middle ground where there's, a lot of regional things taking place and not big international competitions. I think the World University Games is the one that actually does bring people together
A little bit, yeah.
before we get to U.S. Nationals here. But I think there is one thing that's worth kind of noting before we dive into Korean Nationals. It's a bit of news that happened in the kind of downtime over the holiday, but it's very exciting for us, which was the announcement of next year's U.S. Nationals location.
Which happens to be our home city. So St. Louis, Missouri welcomes the 2026 National Championships, which is thrilling, also known as the Olympic Trials, for lack of a better term. I don't know if they officially call it that, but I'm calling it that. So for us, that is exciting as heck because we're just in that, what can we do phase of things, like beyond just going and making it far easier to get there. It's also just the excitement of what could we possibly do, like a meetup or I don't know, what else?
I would like to put out a formal thank you to the U.S. Federation for taking us into consideration and putting nationals
I'm sure that's exactly why.
Right here in our backyard, because we are in the St. Louis metro area. And so, like you said, we don't really have to travel. It's right here in our backyard. A lot of that's very convenient for us. So pretty darn excited
Very
about
much
all
so.
of that. We have a year to kind of think about what we might be able to do as far as taking advantage of that situation here. But we'll keep you guys updated on that. In the meantime, let's take a look at Korean Nationals, which was mostly just a men's and women's event because there was only one ice dance team and no pairs.
Not in the seniors, no.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because it really makes me wonder what's going to happen with World Team Trophy, if Korea will actually even be involved in it because they won't have a pairs team. Yeah, I just don't know if they'll have a presence in order to make that happen, which would be a real shame.
Yeah, very much so. Well, let's talk about the men. To no one's surprise, the magnificent Junhwan Cha showed up in great form, particularly in his long program, which we did have the benefit of seeing. Thank you, Korean broadcast
system or station. KBS Sports.
Thank you, KBS Sports.
Yeah, KBS Sports posted all of this stuff on YouTube, which was terrific and really helpful.
Yes, highly recommend going and finding June's program, particularly, again, his free skate, which was, other than one ever so slight miss on a jump, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he popped the second part of a combo. You could see him laugh his way through it when it happened.
Oh, but he was so good otherwise.
He was so good. His short program there was a little stiff, and he did have a fall. And as we've noted many times before, Junhwan Cha, beautiful skater, beautiful human, ugly faller.
Weirdly, yes.
But he looked so much better coming back in that free skate, way more the version of Junhwan Cha we always hoped to see.
Yes.
So elegant, so refined, so musically connected.
And I didn't go through and look at all of the judges' numbers to see if there were any under rotations or cues or anything. So there may have been other mistakes that were just not visible or translated. However, from what I saw, beautiful, beautiful skate. A 281.02 is a really nice score for him to come out on top with his 9th Korean national title.
It's always crazy when you have somebody who's been like carrying a federation on their
back. And
back.
He's what, 23?
Yeah.
24 maybe?
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. Notably, the KBS feed did not have a choreography box, so we did not have scores to look up at the top and to see kind of the running tally of the technical and how things were being rated. But anyway, Junhwan Cha was terrific. It was great to see him back in strong form. In second place here was Minkyu Siu, the junior skater. He put on a pretty strong performance here. Him landing at second with a 246.78 is well back from June, but that kind of makes sense with that sort of divide between a junior and senior. I don't know that Minkyu's skates, they didn't really stand out to me as particularly memorable, but he's got a lot of quality.
He does. He had a few mistakes and he certainly still has that junior quality, but I do see like a ton of potential in him. Like it's that awareness of, the music. He already has a basis. There is a good foundation there. It's just time and experience, and we'll see how it goes. But I was really happy to see in third Haein Lee, who always just seems like everybody's bestie for the Korean team. Always seems like such a genuinely nice guy. And I mean, he's not the most aesthetic skater. Like, he often does look a bit stiff out there. But I actually thought, especially his short program, he leveled it up a bit and he looked really good.
I enjoyed both of Seong's programs here. I thought they looked a little stronger than some of the ones that we've seen elsewhere in the season. He was like 5 points back from Minkyu Seo, so he obviously could have performed a little bit better for a veteran senior skater. But I thought the thing that was entertaining with him was that there was a KBS behind the scenes video where you really got to see a lot more of the stuff going on at the venue. Notably, not a particularly large venue. It looked much more like a nice club. Their kiss and cry was literally like this kind of shabby little room, like
it was
right
like an
off.
office.
Yeah, it was like an office space just off the ice, so it wasn't even in view of the crowd. So it was kind of an unusual setup. But every time you would see a group of skaters kind of clumped together, they were almost always around Haein Lee. And notably, he and Jun are both quite tall, so they stand out a lot over a lot of the much shorter Koreans. Haein Lee is very much the funny, charismatic, outgoing guy, once he gets off the ice. And you could just see people kind of clustered around him, and he would be sort of the focal point of attention, even more so than Jun. So I do think it's interesting to see those kinds of situations where you have some commanding personalities on the ice who are not when they get off the ice and then flipped around.
So let's move on to the women's competition, which I actually thought was really competitive and really interesting to see, and had something that warmed my heart as part of it, which was the resurgence of one Haein Lee.
Yeah. Now, for me, the big takeaway here is a positively brilliant performance from Chaeyeon Kim in the top spot. So if we go back, if you dig back into the first episodes of this season for us, when we looked at her from, I think it was Shanghai Trophy, where in the early preseason, she was absolutely exceptional. And I watched that particular event and I was like, could Chaeyeon Kim be our world champion this year? Because she really looked like one, particularly when you looked at some of the early performances from Kaori Sakamoto and Isabeau Levito. Chaeyeon Kim looked way stronger than them in the early part of the season. Looking at the fact that she is our reigning bronze world medalist.
Yeah.
That's why I make that comparison with her and Kaori and Isabeau, because they were on that podium last year. And so early on, she looked stronger. But then when she got into the Grand Prix series, it just didn't shake out as well for her. Much like many of the things we talked about over the course of the season, her performances at some of those events would have easily won some of the other events. It was just circumstantially that she was in tougher fields, and the Japanese team in particular was just steamrolling everybody. Notably, they didn't take the top spot against Amber Glenn, but Chaeyeon got kind of left as, I think she was an alternate.
Yeah, she was an alternate.
Which was very surprising for me. To me, she would have been a shoo-in for the Grand Prix final, and it's just not the way it worked out based on those individual competitions. But here, this looked so much more like that early part of the season. These two programs are two of my absolute favorites of the season, and I think that the free skate here was magnificent.
It was. There's no notes on that. She looked absolutely incredible. I thought her short program to Tron, I've seen her do a little better.
I think there might have been some cues or under rotations in that one. Yeah.
It looked tight overall. She looked a little bit more nervous. Her free skate was just brilliant. Absolutely. It felt like she was completely free. She was just in the moment and looked beautiful. So I'm thrilled for her to get her first Korean national title. And I think it sets her up extraordinarily well going into the rest of the season.
She came out of here with a total of 2:16.09. That's a very strong, very competitive score. Now, if you look at Kaori Sakamoto's 228 or something at Japanese nationals, that's definitely a big discrepancy between those two. However, these are also national events, and we can never quite feel perfectly confident in how those would shake out in international. And while Japanese nationals usually doesn't feel very inflated, the women's numbers were very high kind of across their whole top 10 there by way of comparison to what we see in a lot of other federations. So, I can't say that Kaori's number would hold up that well in international competition, but Kaori is incredible.
She is, but also she has proved very fallible this season. So we'll see. I think that the women's event is really wide open and very exciting going into Boston, where you have your favorites, but then you have people like Chaeyeon who could just absolutely come in there and spoil the whole thing for everyone.
If she can just skate cleanly and skate like she did in this free skate here,
she's in the mix.
She's definitely in the mix. What I think is interesting here is that she just barely edged out the then reigning Korean national champion, junior skater Jia Shin. Jia is a beautiful, elegant skater. She came in here with a 2:15.15, so less than a point behind Chaeyeon Kim. So close. Jia Shin has a very similar kind of season. She should have been an obvious pick for junior Grand Prix final and didn't get there, just like Chaeyeon didn't. So neither of them have had a perfect season based on the promise of their previous year. Much like how you could say that Chaeyeon Kim's rival in things right now would be Akaori Sakamoto, Jia Shin's rival is Mao Shimada from Japan. And it's very important for both of these women to, in their nationals here, really kind of set themselves up for the end of the season before they go head to head with those rivals again.
In third and fourth, we have twins. Twins in the sense that they are legitimately identical twins, but also their scores are so close. It's ridiculous. So Yoo-jae Kim looked wonderful here. Like overall, like she and her sister Yoo-sung also looked fantastic. They both went for triple axels in the long program, which I was impressed by. Neither one of them were really successful, but the rest of their programs were extremely well done. Again, these are junior skaters, so a lot of the more fine tuning is still needed for both of them. But especially Yoo-jae, I think, who came in third here, she has that thing, that spark where you can see she has a ton of potential to go very far. It's just they're super young, and give them time because they're definitely ones to watch.
I think Yoo-jae and Yoo-sung both bring a ton of joy to the ice. They're very expressive. They're very bright. Their energy kind of reminds me of like the first time out that we saw like Hana Yoshida, that same kind of like just big presence. You know, they're just very likable. We don't watch a lot of the junior stuff. I think we usually check in just around Junior Grand Prix and Worlds and just kind of see what's going on, but we just don't really have a lot of space in our schedule to pay a lot of attention to juniors. But we have seen a lot of the Kim twins and Jia Shin, and I think all of them are going to be a force to reckon with when they get into seniors. Jia should make that transition next year.
I have to check on where her birthday falls and all of that. I think she should be. Yeah, I think
we've probably got a year or two more. I'm not sure the Kim twins, what their age. They're probably like 15 would be my guess. So it's going to be a couple more years, but I do look forward to them making it into senior competition. I will say, backtracking to Jia Shin really quickly, that I don't like her material as much this season. It feels like they really tried to kind of mature up and age up what she was skating to.
Yeah.
But it feels very samey program to program, and I don't like it as much.
I didn't feel as much the samey vibe that you did, but I did feel like they didn't suit her as well as other programs I've seen her do. I felt like it's time to give her some big girl programs, using Ashley Wagner's phrase that she uses a lot. She had more mature choreography, and I think that's a smart move this season to kind of progress her, but also it's proven not quite as successful. So it's an interesting mix where you want her to evolve, but also it's a bit of growing pains. And we'll see how things progress. I really think she's so talented, and I hope that she sustains and continues to be as successful in seniors as she has been in juniors.
Down in fifth, and not very far behind the Kim twins, was Asen Yoon. We saw Asen just not too long ago. I'm not super familiar with this skater. I do like the quality of her skates quite a lot. You know, when we talk about the expressiveness of the Kim twins, and Chaeyeon Kim, I think, has come a huge way with her own expression on the ice. This is a place that I feel like Asen is kind of missing. Like, she doesn't have that same kind of presence that they do, doesn't exude in the same way. But there's a lot of quality to her skating. She's very enjoyable. I would say that her programs are not as memorable because she doesn't have that same sort of lyricality and musicality that the others do, but still a very solid skater.
Agreed. It just wasn't as exciting. But in sixth, like I said at the top of this discussion, Haein Lee.
So during the off season, In the couple of episodes that we recorded that never got released, mostly because by the time I'd be halfway through an edit, new news would come out that would just annihilate everything that we'd already talked about and invalidate it. So we always felt we were just kind of behind. And so things just kind of kept getting scrapped. And it was such a hard thing to talk about.
Yeah. So if you've been paying attention to the story that has been going on since the summer, both Haein Lee and Young-Yu were suspended for several different reasons.
Essentially misconduct while on a training trip to Italy.
Exactly. That's a good way to summarize it. And with that, Haein was supposed to be out essentially through this season and next. Young-Yu is just this season. Haein Lee basically fought back and got a legal team involved and spent the last several months working towards proving her innocence. And overall,
I don't know if it counts as innocence.
I know. I'm not. What's the word?
It's more, I think that it was a messy situation where, yes, there was some
There were poor choices made.
There were poor choices made. And certainly the discourse online went a lot of different directions on that. And I can understand why. And I don't want to get into all of it here. It's all complicated and messy.
And overall, it seems like there was enough proof that whatever did happen, Haein was at least cleared enough to continue to perform internationally. So regardless of any of it, I'm thrilled to have her back and hopeful that we'll see good things from her for the rest of the season.
Seeing Haein here again was that reminder of what a special skater she is. She brings so much charm and energy and personality to the ice. It certainly was rougher looking in her free skate. You could tell that that program hasn't been performed enough to feel fully evolved. You could see her thinking through a lot of it. You could see the conditioning not holding up. But she wasn't even allowed to train on fully accredited ice for months.
For at least a bit of it.
Yeah.
Well, the only other competition, and it wasn't really a competition.
It wasn't at all.
No, was the dance, which just had some of our faves, Hannah Lim and Ye Kwan. And as wonderful as they are, it was not a competition because there was nobody to compete against.
Yeah,
so,
they just had to show up, get their scores so they could be handed a medal. They basically just had to perform. And we've seen that happens a lot at different smaller federations and stuff where they just have disciplines where there isn't hardly anybody there. Sometimes you only have two people on top of a podium. Sometimes you just have to show up and win. And that's what they did here. They looked good. I wouldn't say they looked exceptional. It didn't seem like they had trained super hard before coming to this because, they didn't need to. But that's okay. Keep it in the tank for the next handful of international competitions. And I'm looking forward to seeing those. I love this team. I'm still iffy on the programs this year, but they're still great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to next season's Olympic year programs. Honestly, already I'm thinking about those for them.
Yes.
Well, I think it's time for us to start talking about what could be happening at the Canadian Nationals. One of the things I want to talk about, because I think it's really worth mentioning, is how kind of unfortunate. We're going to get to the pros. They're much more established and successful in duos than they are in singles.
Absolutely. At this point, yeah.
But the unfortunate truth of the singles situation in Canada has them with only one slot each for men and women going into Worlds in Boston. And if in Boston, whoever gets that spot doesn't make the top 10, they will only have one spot each at the Olympic Games. For Canada, that has produced the likes of Kurt Browning, Brian Orser, Elvis Stoico, Joni Rochette, Elizabeth Manley. There's such a long list and a legacy of greatness in their single skatings. Patrick Chan, how could I forget Patrick Chan?
Yeah.
Shame on me. The list goes on and on. So it is very upsetting to me where I'm just like, I don't know what to think.
There are ebbs and flows, but for a nation that feels like they're born with skates on, an ice nation, it is a little unfortunate to see those talent pools be relatively small. A distressing place here is the condition of the men's division. We've said it before, minus Keegan Messing, it has been a heavily diminished program. Several of their more notable guys are not going to be in this competition. I would say most specifically their reigning national champion, Wesley Chu, had to withdraw today. Is the news out of that? I'm guessing it's injury or something. I haven't heard.
I have not heard why. I just heard that he's out.
Yeah, and Wesley is very hot and cold in general and is not typically super competitive with the stronger men internationally.
He's a promising skater. He just hasn't kind of capitalized on that promise yet.
There's a lot of talent there, but not a lot of wow most of the time. But he did capture that national title last year, so it is unfortunate he won't be there. Steven Gogolev, who is kind of been a non-factor because of injuries and stuff, and he is also just not a great artistic skater. He withdrew a while ago, so he's not in it. So there's only a handful of the guys, but I guess it does create some good opportunities for a couple of the other men like a Roman Sadovsky or on Anthony Paradis.
It could be Paradis. It could be Alexis Rancic. I'm really putting my hope right now on Roman having a great competition. Beyond just the fact that Roman has had a rough few years, and last year was just disastrous for him on so many levels, it would be thrilling to see him get another Canadian national title, and more so to just come here and do 2 solid programs. It would be amazing just to see 2 great programs from him, because honestly, he doesn't have to throw everything he's capable of to win this national title.
No.
Come in and just be solid. Do what you can do, and you'll win.
Yeah, then there's no quad kings here, right?
No.
So you don't have to have massive numbers to be highly competitive. The most dynamic and interesting skater up there right now is the junior Anthony Paradis.
Oh my God, yes.
However, Anthony just doesn't have big jumps. I don't even think he has a triple axel.
Not the last time I saw.
He is the most exciting artistic skater.
Oh, he's brilliant.
And is a fantastic musical interpretive performer. But yeah, he just doesn't have the big ups, and he doesn't have the stuff that will lock him for seniors yet. But he has been doing a really nice job in the juniors world. So it is not out of the realm of possibility that he could take this, given the
he was on the
current state of
podium
things.
last year.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if someone else happens to appear on the scene and just show up on the right day and take the whole thing. I think that would be exciting too. Some new blood would be totally welcome. But yes, you're not wrong. I think Anthony Paradis could come here, show off how brilliant an artist he is. And if everybody else does not come with their jumps in place, he could win.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible. The women's competition, I feel like it's Maddie Schizis
Versus herself?
Yes, exactly. As it was last year. And she beat herself, and Kaya Reuter became the national champion.
Yeah.
And this is no shade to Kaya. She did a great job last year in taking that national title. But Maddie Schizis has the experience, the technical content. Her programs are better this season. So if she comes in here and again, even makes a couple of mistakes, I think the title is still hers. She just can't fall apart.
This is always the trouble with Maddie Schizis, is that it always feels like she defeats herself. Maddie Schizis skates best angry.
She does.
When she is mad on the ice, I think is when you get the best performances, the most focused, the most determined. I kind of like a Maddie Schizis. I didn't even put together that goes
Bad
with her.
Maddie.
Yeah, bad Maddie. These are better programs this season, definitely. However, I still don't think they have been particularly competitive or interesting when we've seen them on the international scene. I mean, I would love to see Maddie come back out and reclaim that national title. I also, I really enjoyed Kaya Reuter last year. She's a skater that I would love to see actually level up into being a proper senior skater. Her free skates are beautiful. She's a fun, effervescent skater. She does have that kind of junior youthful quality in a lot of it yet. I was hoping after Canadian Nationals last year that we would really see her level up into an international competitor, because she didn't even have her international minimums to go to some of those major championships. And I just honestly don't feel like I've seen enough of her this season to really know where she's at.
And she's also in the midst of a transition. So she moved from Scott Davis to the Tracy Wilson, Brian Orser camp. A coaching change is a massive change. So it would not surprise me at all if she stays steady, maybe is on the podium this year, but isn't perfect, because she's in a lot of ways probably relearning a lot of what she had learned. And that's to take nothing away from what she's already done and what she accomplished with Scott Davis, but she's trying to level up. And the fact that she is working with the likes of Tracy Wilson right now tells me she is taking it seriously, that she is trying to push herself and become that more senior established skater. It just takes time. So I'm curious to see what comes out of this competition for her, but I still think it's Maddie's to lose.
Yeah, I still wouldn't be surprised if Kaya just took it again.
It's entirely possible.
It really could go either way.
Or, we could have one of your faves, Sarah Maud Dupuis, just come out there and blow everybody's socks off.
Yeah.
You never know.
Sarah Ma Dupuy early in the season had a sort of like shockingly great skate at one of the Challenger series.
Yeah, one of her short programs.
It was like probably the best that I've ever seen her skate. And she took it very much in stride, but was obviously very excited about it. But I did think some of the reactions I saw online were people like, oh my gosh, like, is this where we're going to see that evolution of Sarah Ma Dupuy? Because she always feels like a dependably middle tier skater who is really nice to watch, but has just not leveled up into that really elite level of high competition. She's got holes in her stuff technically where she's just not going to be able to bank big numbers. And she hasn't always had terrific free skates, but she is capable of some really great programs. And she showed that early on. I would be thrilled to see her come in here and finally crank that dial a little higher and do something exceptional. Seeing her on the podium would be fabulous here. But again, I haven't seen enough of her since that early Challenger series to have a gauge for where she's at.
On a much brighter note for Canada, their dance competition is stacked. So it'll be a very interesting competition. I think you're looking at two different competitions within the competition, the battle for gold and the battle for bronze. Because the battle for gold will be between Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier, reigning national champions, Canadian national treasures. Like they've done it all. And then the have been around for a long time, but still considered the young upstarts, Marjorie Lajoie and Zachary Lagat. This season, we've seen some vulnerability from Gillis and Poirier. I really like both of their programs this season. I know you like their their rhythm dance and not necessarily their free as much. Although Paul's suit in the free dance, amazing.
Fantastic.
Marjorie and Zach look fantastic, but they have also been a little slower to kind of come up to full power this season because of the second concussion. And I'm saying second in the past year.
Yeah.
For Marjorie.
Yeah.
Had, and so they've had to not push themselves into a lot of new, more like repurposing some of their
They've had to play
moves.
A little safe.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. They have still looked outstanding. I think it's going to be closer than we've seen before.
Gillis and Poirier, when they've been clean, they've been extremely difficult to beat.
Yes.
But Paul has had a couple of very significant falls that have knocked them right off of the podium.
Mm-hmm.
And ice dance is not forgiving to those kinds of things, particularly when the falls happen in important elements and they can just wipe them right out of your score. And while both of those things definitely felt like flukes, I have said a lot of times that for me, Gillis and Poirier always seem like a team that peaks early and tends to taper a little bit. They seem to always just come out looking really, really strong. And then the programs go a little stale over the course of the season. And sometimes I feel like, as much as I always want big expression, Piper sometimes can feel almost like histrionic in her like over exuding in programs. And I think that there is a point in their later seasons where it feels like it's pushing the character harder than being felt in a way that I just don't enjoy. I mean, I do think this rhythm dance is really strong from them. I do kind of question their changing the outfits every competition, but
I loved
cute.
it at first. In the beginning of the season, I was like, oh, that's so them. It's so clever. And it is so them and very clever. But I've already kind of lost my excitement about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like...
It feels like a gimmick.
A bit. Yes, it does. And while I'm not necessarily bothered by it, it's no longer an aspect of interest to me. I'm still much more interested in his long program suit that's been the same since the beginning of the season because the big open back is very cool.
Yeah. It's a neat design. I don't understand what it has to do with the song at all. And I have no idea what story they are telling in that extremely difficult, complicated, impressive, but to me, emotionally cold free dance.
See, I feel like there is some kind of angel versus the devil thing going on. And I don't know if that's right, but if nothing else,
that's what the outfits tell you, but I don't know if that's what the skate tells you.
I'll have to watch it again and see. But I feel like it's telling me a story. Anyway, But Lajoie and Lagat's programs this year, especially their free dance, is just exceptional. I think their Austin Powers rhythm dance is not my favorite from them.
I think that's the detriment to them being a top spot is I don't think that program is strong enough and is just a little too corny. I mean, it fits the bill for what the requirements are for the rhythm dance, but I think that it's just goofy enough to maybe hold them back.
That's a good way to put it. I do feel like it might actually be the thing that keeps them, if they're both perfect. I mean, frankly, if they're both perfect, Gillis and Poirier are going to take it. It's just a given at Canadian Nationals because it's ice dance, and that's how things go.
We've seen it's like with Skate Canada or Canadian stuff in general, it often seems to be some of the most questionable scoring
very,
and judging.
Very padded.
I would highly expect this ice dance competition to go exactly how you would expect it to on paper, unless there are unignorable flaws. Otherwise, they're going to land Gillis and Poirier at number 1, Lala in 2, and I would guess probably Laurent and Legac in 3rd. However, international judges have not loved that team this year.
I was going to say, again, on paper, if you go back through Canadian trajectory for teams over the past 5 to 10 years, because everything in ice dance is a long game, I would absolutely agree with Laurent and Legac ending up in 3rd. And it's still very likely, as long as, again, everyone's perfect and does what they need to do. However, yeah, you're right. International judges have really sent a message that they do not like these programs this year. And I'm not 100% clear as to why, but they have had some shockingly low scores. They've also had some problems.
There's been some errors here and there, yeah.
And I feel like at least in every competition I've seen 1 or 2. They just haven't looked as solid in these programs. And the judges obviously do not enjoy them, especially that long program. They just seem real turned off by. They're cowboyish.
Which is so fun.
It's a very fun program.
But the judges don't like it.
They don't like it. It is quirk and oddness and just the exact way that Laurent and Legac always have. But this version, this iteration, if I were their coaches, I'd be like, did we maybe bring back last season's long free skate?
The thing that I worry about with Laurent and Legac is that they are so quirky. They are so unusual compared to the other teams in their style and their subject matter. But I just wonder if the judges get frustrated with all of their programs being quirky. One could be quirky as hell, but the other one needs to show a different side. And they're so invested in these really kind of goofy character pieces that I find really enjoyable and endearing, but it always feels like you're watching more of a exhibition piece than a competition piece. And I just wonder if they hit the point on this sort of cowboy one where the judges were like, we just don't like this shtick. I don't know that that's fair because that's a purely aesthetic reaction to it. But one way or another, they have been told without question in the scores that they are not delivering what international judges want to see.
Absolutely. And I think on the flip, you have Fabry and Air, who I feel like the judges have embraced a little bit more this season, and they have continued to level up. They even have in the rhythm dance have won at several competitions against teams that are technically ranked higher than them internationally. So we'll see how it goes in Canada on home turf, but they've definitely had a stronger season than I expected.
Yeah, Fabry and Air are another. I mentioned a skater earlier that I said I feel like is pretty mid-tier. I think it was like Sermon Dupuis. I feel like Fabry and Air are kind of in that same way. A aesthetically very nice, enjoyable team that just feels like they're usually middle of the pack. But that rhythm dance is really cute and it suits them well.
It does.
They have had some problems with it. There's that very notable fall that Fabry had where she did the splits in the middle of an element that looked kind of painful and definitely kind of knocked them down. But they are just one of the most genial teams. They've just got such an affable air about them, which allows them to shake off problems without feeling like it's wrecked them in the same way that other teams do.
They've been through a lot. And you can kind of feel it from them, where it's like little problems don't seem nearly to bother them as much because they've been through worse.
Yes, I would love to see them make a little bit of a play here. I do think Laurent and Legac are the better team, but how that will look on home ice, I just don't know.
Laurent and Legac are my faves just because I like the bizarre.
Yeah.
I like the weird.
I like their style.
But if we're going just based on what I've seen this year, I'm giving the edge to Fabry and Air.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Let's finish it up with the pairs, which feels like hopefully a foregone conclusion that we're going to see Deanna and Max show up here and be brilliant, but they had to pull out of the Grand Prix final due to illness. So I don't know how much that impacted their overall training and such.
Yeah, but that also was the same time that Deanna was getting her Canadian citizenship.
A couple of weeks later, yeah. So hopefully it didn't have much of an impact and we're just going to see them at full power. I'm just sort of level setting, I think, for my own expectations going in.
So we haven't seen them for a little while, and those programs definitely needed a little bit of fine tuning. They've been kind of off and on through the season with them. There's some times where they look super strong. I think it's the free skate that has a little bit of weakness in it. So I'm hoping that in this time where we haven't seen them, that they have been kicking the tires, making a few adjustments, just making sure that all of that is more refined and more ready for championship competition. And particularly now that Deanna is a Canadian, this would be a good moment to show up and prove why you are the reigning champions. And, you know, if we look at the competition here, you've got Pereira and Michaud, who are a really nice team, have not been flawless this season by any means. There's been a lot of weaknesses in these programs. I think the free skate in particular seems to run out of gas. And a few times I've just felt like they've just seemed a little out of sync with each other. No huge errors. Like, it never feels like they're one of those teams that's like collapsing under pressure. They just haven't seemed as good this season as I would want to see them after the way they looked last season.
I agree with that. And then Chaeyeon Lee and Lucas Attiere, I think they've actually looked pretty strong this season. They're not at the level of a Deanna and Max by any stretch, but I think they've been steadily getting better. They're a young team, so it's been nice to see progress being made. Like, you can see them being excited about it and getting hyped for the fact that they're coming in and really embracing that senior title that they have had for a little while now. It felt like they were on and off last season, and this season they've been a little steadier.
I think they're a more unified front now. They look a little bit more balanced with each other. The last time that we saw them, I think it was on the Grand Prix, they had clean skates, and I think cleaner than maybe they had in a while. They looked thrilled with them. They are noticeably slower than a lot of the other teams, and that really does hamper the aesthetic quality of a lot of their elements, particularly in some of the spins and the death spirals and stuff like that. But they're kind of getting it together, and I like this team a lot. They just still feel pretty junior.
They do.
So I don't see them challenging those other two teams in any significant way, but I do like them. So I'm just hoping that they continue to level up.
Agreed.
Well, then I think where we want to wrap up with this is just a very quick overview of the World University Games that'll be happening in Torino, Italy. We watched the University Games last time, and we're kind of surprised to see this mix of collegiate level, non-elite skaters, and then some very elite, very notable skaters in the mix, which has got to be a weird thing for the collegiate skaters who are not in, the ISU competitions to be both going into something like this where they know they're going to get annihilated by a handful of very elite skaters. But at the same time, this is an opportunity for them to skate with people who I would imagine they look up to or that they're just fans of. So it's got to be a little bit of a mix of like, well, Kaori Sakamoto came here like 2 years ago and hit us like a wrecking ball. But hey, I lost to Kaori Sakamoto. That's such an honor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like similar things are kind of coming with this one.
Oh my gosh. I did not know who was going to be at the World University Games. I, had seen that it was mentioned that it was coming up, and I'm like, oh, cool, let's take a look. That men's competition is interesting.
Yeah.
We have Yuma Kageyama, Daniel Grassel, Shun Sato, Sota Yamamoto, Junhwan Cha, and Mikhail Shidorov. That's a Grand Prix.
Yeah, that's a full-on Grand Prix competition. Yeah. All happening at this thing where every other guy in this competition is going to get bulldozed.
Unfortunately.
By dudes who can throw quads.
This is going to be very interesting to watch. And in particular, I'm really interested to see Yuma and Mikhail Shidorov because they both have had just such interesting seasons. And I feel like this is a really good setup towards the World Championships. And not to take anything away from Shun Sato and Daniel Grassel either, just because they are totally hitting scores that could be in the mix there. And there is, of course, always the part of me that wants Junhwan Cha to come in and just beat everyone because I love Junhwan Cha.
Well, I feel like this one has an opportunity for Junhwan Cha and Sota Yamamoto to reclaim a little gloss.
That's true.
Because they have both been adrift in this season to a degree, especially Sota.
Especially Sota. I think June has had some brighter spots.
Certainly, but neither of them made it to the Grand Prix final.
Yes.
And they're both terrific skaters. So I think this feels like a reset button, particularly for Sota Yamamoto, after he had a pretty disastrous Japanese nationals.
And he's only here because Kawamura had to pull out due to injury. So he gets that other shot at it, which I'm really happy he does.
And the women's is kind of like that as well. I mean, we have Seong-wi, who has been not as particularly competitive on international stage, but is still a strong skater and should show up well here. But then you've got Mona Chiba, Hana Yoshida, Ryan Sumiyoshi, and Laura Naki-Gutman. So you have a bunch of very strong Japanese women. The surprise Italian star who really showed up on the podium at Finland this year. Some of these skaters, I think, are going to be looking for a little bit of redemption after not having as strong a performance at their own nationals as they would have wanted to. So again, I feel like this is kind of a nice reset button because we saw Laura Naki-Gutman take second at the Italian nationals. We saw Hana Yoshida and Ryan Sumiyoshi underperform a little bit at Japanese nationals, even though their scores, we kept making the joke that like, well, that would have won Skate America this year because that was like the whole top 10 at Japan. But Hana and Ryan are both terrific skaters that you would have thought would have been higher ranked than they ended up being there. Mona Chiba has been having a great season. She's just on that outside edge of really being a big contender, and then you can't count her out. So I think for all of them, this is like a nice little kind of low pressure practice run.
I feel especially for Mona Chiba, this is the practice run for 4 continents, which will be the practice run for Worlds. I mean, she is amongst the top 5 women in the world right now going into Worlds from my perspective. It's like her, Kaori Sakamoto, Amber Glenn, question mark?
Yeah.
It's like Chaeyeon Kim.
Chaeyeon Kim, yeah.
And who would you put in 5th? My brain is immediately like...
Oh, for Worlds? Oh my gosh, I don't even want to go there yet.
Okay, never mind then.
See, I think that like Moni and Chaeyeon are kind of at that neck and neck, that sort of for bronze zone. And this is also, we're getting ahead of ourselves because we'll talk about Worlds as we get closer to it, because we also have people like Isabel Levito, who's the reigning silver medalist and who has just disappeared for most of the season. So we have no idea.
Well, that's the thing. Like, Isabeau's totally capable of coming in and ending up on that podium. But right now, she's been invisible since October. Yeah,
we have no idea. But I would expect here at the World University Games that Mona Chiba is your obvious winner for this. However, don't count out Hana Yoshida. She's not having the best season. It's not as strong as it was last season. But if she can get some of that, I think of it as bright fire, because I don't think I've ever seen Hana Yoshida skate angry, but that big, powerful personality of hers that she can harness and bring out there, like it is not out of the realm of possibility that if she gets her technical under control, which has been her weak spot this season, she could give Moni a run for her money there. And this would be an interesting place to see that fight. So that's what I'm hoping for is a little internal battle here to reclaim some like Japanese supremacy.
Either way, I am looking forward to just watching it because it's going to be a better competition than, frankly, I was expecting. So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, should be super fun.
Well, do we want to do a gold in our heart for this time?
Oh my gosh. Well, the easy one for me is just Chaeyeon Kim.
She was gold in the medals.
Yeah, I know, but I just love those skates. I was just so pleased with them. They made me so happy. I really enjoyed them.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with something like that we have not talked about. It basically doesn't count, but I don't care. Golden Skate actually had shared a Insta story or a reel. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was the full video performance from Stefan Lembiel at a show in Europe that they were at. And I believe it was called The Whale. Oh my God. It was that reminder of how brilliant a skater Stefan Lembiel is. Not that you really need the reminder, but go to their Instagram page, find it, watch it, embrace it. I mean, Stefan Lembiel, why wouldn't you? Of course you'd go watch him. That's my gold in my heart is Stefan Lembiel this week.
You talked about it and I haven't even seen it. So,
it's so good.
Yeah. And I know it probably feels like a hedge to say that about Chaeyeon as far as like being the gold and giving her the gold anyway. But I feel like for her, after a season where I think that she has been diminished in the overall sort of rankings based on what happened in the Grand Prix, I'm sort of thinking about that in a longer term because like if I was putting my chips into somebody's, I don't know how to make gambling references. I don't gamble,
Coffer?
but like
Is that a thing?
I don't know. I don't know how to place bets. It doesn't make any sense to me. This isn't FanDuel. Thank God that doesn't seem to appear in the skating world.
It's got to somewhere.
Oh, so gross. But she's definitely somebody that I would be putting some chips into to say, like, I'm really hoping to see her return to that world podium. But it's always tough because there's like 12 skaters I would love to see on that podium because I'm just a fan of so many of them. But these are really a couple of my favorite programs. And I hope that this gives her the confidence boost to come in strong to the remaining international competitions this season.
Agreed.
Well, as we wrap up here, in the comments, let us know what you thought of Korean Nationals if you had a chance to watch it. If you didn't, definitely look up KBS Sports on YouTube. You can find all of those performances, and there's a lot of them that are really nice. Let us know if you're going to be watching World University Games and what you think that competition will shake out as.
I bet you are now that you know that Yuma Kageyama is going to be there.
Hell yeah. I mean, you're going to Yuma, you've got Mikhail, you've got June, you've got Shun. I mean, that is a worthwhile competition.
Hell yeah.
And then probably a lot of people who are going to be scoring very, very low that are just collegiate skaters who are going to be excited to be a part of it. And I'm hyped for all of them as well.
Yes. Next time, we're going to talk about the results from Canadian Nationals and the World University Games, but we're also going to be previewing U.S. Nationals.
Oh, yeah. So big stuff ahead. So look forward to that in the coming episodes. And for Choreography, I'm Adrian Buskey.
And I'm Wendy Buskey.
And we will talk to you next time.
Bye.